The tutorial topic is about assignment phase 2B, and for the entire assignment you're going to finish a web project which will take care of the client side and the server side, as well as the security of the server side. Now on assignment phase 1 you have already taken care of the client side. You have designed the outlook of your website, and for the assignment 2B, first of all, you're going to set up a server on the Amazon Web virtual server, and during phase 2B, you're going to take care of the server side. You'll write code using server-side languages such as PHP and MySQL or SQLite, and you're also going to take care of the interaction between the client side and server side. Now about this tutorial, the outline of today's tutorial will be divided into 3 parts. First of all, I'm going to introduce the SQL language, which is used to query the database, and the database is used to put all the necessary information on the server side. It's to store this information inside this server-side database. And for SQLite and MySQL, they actually have different approaches to query the database and get the information out of the databases. And first of all, I'm going to introduce the SQL language to deal with the database, and then I'm going to talk about the interaction between the client side and the server side for phase 2B. And the interaction will mainly be divided into 2 parts. The first is about storing information from the client side to the server side, and this is usually done by administrator, which is admin, and the administrator will have the power to control what information the website contains. And in order to put information inside to the server side conveniently, you will have to design the interface and let the admin to use the interface from the client side and input information inside the interface and transfer the information to the server side and store it at the databases. This is the first part, and the second part about the interaction between the client side and server side is about retrieving information from server side and displaying this information at the client side. And for this we require you to when the user of your website is viewing your website content, the content of the website is not static. The content of the website, for example, how many products and what products inside a category, those information are actually stored at the server-side database. And whenever a user is viewing your website, the client side will send a request to the server side to get those information from server side database first, and then display the information at the client side so the user can see it. Okay, this is the interaction between the client side and the server side. The third part of today's tutorial is actually an extra bonus, which will not be covered in exams, or you may also not use this extra bonus to implement your website. But if you have extra time and you have the ability to learn this thing by yourself, then if you can master this extra bonus, which is a fully baked framework, then your development phase for web projects will be massively shortened. And in the real world, when programmers are developing a web project, they usually do not write everything from scratch, and they usually use some frameworks which have been fully baked, which means that the framework has already providing some basic stuff and basic functions and basic code. And the real world web developers, they only have to use the framework and add their own creation based on this framework. And this is the extra bonus which will be introduced at the last of this tutorial. So first of all, let's learn about SQL language. And in this assignment 2B, you can use either of the SQLite or MySQL to deal with the database problems. For SQLite is a self-contained database, which means that the entire database is contained in a single file, and this single file can be put anywhere on the server. But sometimes, for security reasons, you are not suggested to put the database file at the same root directory as your website. And for SQLite and MySQL, they actually have some differences, and each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. And for detailed comparison between these two, you can see this website. And basically, the most different part between SQLite and MySQL is that the SQLite, they do not require any configuration, and it's simple and clean. However, it is not scalable, which means that you can use SQLite for small websites or medium websites with 100K or less case per day. And for MySQL is highly scalable. Most of the large websites use MySQL instead of SQLite. Okay, so for more detailed comparison, you can refer to this website. And the tutorial slides are already uploaded to the website. Okay, so let's deal with both of the query languages independently. For SQLite, if you have already finished phase 2A, which means that you already have a virtual server to use, and you can see your website by inputting the IP of your server on the browser. And if you have finished this part, then you have to for SQLite, the basic setup is only to install Apache and PHP, and because the SQLite has already been installed in your web server, and only one line of code, which is sudo. This code will help with the installation of the Apache server and PHP. And for the detail about SQLite, I'm going to use the tutorial last year to give a general introduction. Okay, this is the tutorial last year. It's about database management. It's also intended to help you guys to do assignment phase 2B. And for this database management, introduce details about SQLite. And also introduces how to use PHP, how to use SQLite inside PHP code. Okay. Then for the database of SQLite, first of all, it is free, and the advantage is that it is lightweight, and you do not have to do any configuration, and everything stored in a single file. And for security reasons, it's not suggested to put the SQLite database file, which is the single file of the SQLite, anywhere. You must not put it at the public web root server root. You can, for example, if you are using Apache and PHP servers configuration, then your default root directory of your website is www.html, and it is suggested to put the SQLite database at an upper directory, which is www, and only one line of code is needed to create a SQLite database and go inside and use the SQLite languages to deal with the database. Okay, after you have finished creating the SQLite database, which is a single file, in this example it is called cart.db. Then you will be going inside using the SQLite language via shell, and you can create new table. In assignment 2, we are required to create 2 tables at least. First of all is the category table, and then the products table. Okay, it's very basic SQL language. It's very basic SQL language. I suppose everyone has some fundamental knowledge about the SQL language. So this kind of codes, it actually creates a table which is called products and have the primary key and have a category ID, and the category ID is externally, which is a foreign key to the categories, which means that the 2 tables, products and the category, they have this relationship, and it has a name field and a price field, and yeah. After you create tables, you have to and if something went wrong with your table, you can delete the table by this line, and after you create the table, you also have to insert into the tables some content, some information. For example, you intend to create a category which is called fruits. Then you use this line of code to insert the category of fruits inside your category table, and it's the same with the products table. And if you would like to create for example, apple and banana as products under the fruit category, then you use this line of code. And this is the category ID, which means that it is the apple and banana is connected with the fruits category. Okay, this is how to create records inside your tables. And so how to retrieve information inside tables is use select. Store means that you can select everything out of a table, and this line of code means that as long as the product's category ID is 1, which is fruit, then you select all these products under the fruit category, and and out of a table. And this is how you retrieve information from tables. And how to update information inside the table is use update. And how to delete information from tables, use delete. And these are basic SQL languages. Okay, it's quite simple. And for the SQLite, since after you create a single file, you are using a shell to import and retrieve information from this file. And actually there is also a GUI client for SQLite, so that you may view information inside the table via a more concrete interface. Okay, after we have known about the SQLite languages, and the second part is to introduce about how on the server side, when we use PHP language to deal with SQLite. We have actually a live sample. You can take a look at this example. This is the server-side PHP file, and what it does is that for this variable is actually passed from the client side. The client side will pass a variable called category ID to the server side, and server side, using the get global variable, it gets the value out of this category ID variable. And for the entire file, what it does is that the client side passes the name of the category to the server side, and the server side gets everything every product under this category and output it to the client side. So how does it do it? First of all, you have the category, you have the database file, and this line is to enable the foreign key support, and for this line of code, this is actually the SQL query language, and using the prepare function is you actually do not have to understand prepare function at this stage. It's for security reasons, which is to deal with the SQL injection security problem. We use prepare. For this statement, it means that for the question mark, it means that it will take a value of the rival inside this line of statement, and this question mark will be replaced with a number or with a value which indicates the value of the category ID. And this line of code means that it will retrieve everything from the products table, and all the products under the category will be retrieved. And after the statement is prepared, then it needs to execute this statement, which using this function execute, and this value is passed from the client side. So the client side, they pass the value of the category ID, and this value will be replacing this question mark, and this line of SQL statement will be executed, which means that after the execution, the result will be the products under the category ID. So after we get all the products under the category ID, we use equal to output the information. And when server side is outputting some information, the client side will get them, and the information will be passed to the client side. This is what this server side program does, and what during the process it deals with the database. Okay. For more details, you may read this PPT carefully, and it's also uploaded to the course website. So we continue. This is about SQLite, and it's also I also introduced the sample code. And after the SQLite, you may also choose to use MySQL. So as mentioned, they have different advantages, and you may choose to use either one. So for MySQL, the basic setup is different from SQLite. Okay, see, the basic setup is a little bit complicated. And after you install MySQL, it will be a very classic web server framework, which is called Linux, Apache, and MySQL and PHP LAMP. And the basic setup needs the following codes. First of all, this is to install MySQL, Apache, and the PHP. And this line of code is to start the MySQL service. And after you have started the MySQL service, you have to set a password to the root user. For MySQL, it has the capability of managing users of databases, but for SQLite, it does not have the user management. So if you would like to have different users using your website, using your database, then you have to use MySQL, and you can set different privileges for different users. And after you set the root password, then you can log into your MySQL service using with your root identity and your password. And when you are executing this line of code, if you are encountering some problems, then you may start to consider about the virtual server, the configuration of your virtual server, because because your virtual server it actually has firewall, and for firewall not all the ports of your server is open. And for example, for HTTP it uses port 80, and you have to open the port 80 at your firewall so that so that you can view your website from outside. And it is the same thing with MySQL, and sometimes you have to open some specific ports for MySQL in order to use MySQL service. And just a hint, the MySQL port is 3306. The default port is this, and if you encounter some problem, you may consider to open that port on your virtual server's firewall. Okay. And if you are successfully logging into MySQL, then you also have to create database and create tables and insert data into the table. So for MySQL, you can create different databases, and each time you have to use a single database. So this line of code, it creates a database called IERG4210, and this line of code selects this database so that later on, when you are creating tables or creating or inserting data, is all inside this single database. So I create a table called categories, and I create a table called products, and also I insert some values inside category and inside product, and these are also same code with SQLite. Both they are all SQL languages. Okay, so yeah, MySQL, after you have finished the configuration, then you may use it directly, and it's quite similar to SQLite. And okay, so we have finished the first part of today's tutorial, which is about the SQL language. And the second part is about the interaction between the client side and the server side. And the requirement, the assignment requirement, the first item of the requirement is about the SQL language, which we have already finished. You have to create tables using SQL services. And the second part is to create an admin panel. So for this admin panel, what the function of this admin panel is that from the client side, the client side will take in some input. For the client side, there are some forms, and the forms will take in some input, and the input information will be passed to the server side and will be dealt via PHP and SQL language. And at the server side languages, the server side program services will put the information inside your database. This is what admin panel does. And for this part, we actually have sample code, and the sample code has also been uploaded to the course website, and you may use all the sample code directly without modifying anything. But you have to add your own part inside the sample code so that it can be finished. Okay, you can see that the sample code is well written, and we can guarantee that there is no bug in the sample code. But some part of the sample code, they are not provided, and you have to write some parts by yourselves. Okay, so for this admin panel, you can see that for this admin panel, you will have the interface to create a category and input the name and submit the category so that this new category can be stored inside your database. And you also have an interface to create products in each of the category, and also the products including an image will be stored inside your database or stored at your web server. So you may use the sample code directly. And you may also take a look at the server side. We may also take a look at the server side PHP code. You can see that most of the part has already been written, and some of them you have to complete by yourselves. You can see we have already indicated to do the part that you have to complete by yourselves. Okay. So for this admin panel, since most of the code has already been provided, you may read them carefully. Some comments about each line of code has been given in detail, and what each line of code does has been introduced. You may read them carefully and learn. And since most of the part has already been provided, the difficult part about the admin panel is about file uploading. You can see that about file uploading, how do you upload a single file, for example, a picture from the client side to the server side. And at the client side, what takes in file upload is of course forms. So the forms has to be read like this. The encryption type is multi-part and form data, and this input type will be a button which can take in this button which takes in the file from your computer. And at the server side, we will have to use a global variable called files to get information about the file you are trying to upload. So the files, this variable is a superglobe array which stores the information of an uploaded file, and it has all kinds of fields. Okay, it will have all kinds of fields. You can see that, for example, this field temp name, it indicates the file path of the temporarily stored file. When you are uploading a file to the server will store the uploaded file to a temporary location first, and you may use this line of code, move uploaded file from the temporarily stored server to the destination server that you intend your uploaded file to be. And yeah, so you can see that when you are manipulating the files uploaded to the server, you have to use all kinds of different fields to get different information from the uploaded file. And if you are uploading file, and you may also encounter some errors, you may consider that your destination folder may have the wrong permission for users to upload files. You may have to grant permission for adding file to the destination folder. Okay.